Hello, I'm Catherine Dorasset, back to continue another discussion, another episode of issues related to jobs and job searching. And this isn't going to be more in the vein of a pep talk, because I know that people have been through what I went through. And if somebody else can describe for you, I think something that resonates with your experience, I hope that it can make you feel less alone, and it can make you feel like less of what you're going through is crazy, and maybe will validate your experience. Just to give some backup information here, I put myself through law school. I was lucky. I did have my undergraduate paid for, but I had to put myself through law school. I went to law school in Tennessee, in Memphis. I decided to take the California bar. I had to work the whole time I was in law school, even though somehow there's some American Bar Association rule that you're not supposed to work your first year, which sounds ridiculous. That's not the real world. People have to work. I didn't have enough student loans to cover all my expenses. So I took out federal loans, and in my final year decided to take the California bar. And I got a job while I was studying as a waitress in a Greek restaurant with owners who were in their late 60s. So there's a weird paradox that's coming here, because my problem with the most amount of ageism I felt was at the restaurant with the older workers, the older owners rather. The people that were employed there were by and large very young, late teens, early 20s. Some of them were not in college or college bound. They just worked there, but they had a different lifestyle than I did, because I was very somber. I just finished law school. I was always very, very worried about money, and worried about the bar exam, and worried. I took flashcards with me to work, which I don't know if it was that effective, because I always got interrupted. So I was always worried, and I had no time for really relaxing or drinking or doing things that might have endeared me to my much younger co-workers. And so I just had different things on my mind. And I didn't feel like I fit in. I felt like, being honest, looking back on it, I felt I had to put up with a lot of abuse. There was a lot of really obscene sexual language that went on there. There was a lot of name calling for anybody that was in my position that was older. And it was all rough kidding. But if things ever got tense, that rough kidding certainly didn't feel kidding anymore, because people will exchange tense words at work. And so you felt like, at least I felt like, the younger people had less patience with any fellow employees that were older, even though I could run circles around them, because I've been doing that for a while, and it just wasn't hard for me. I've always been kind of athletic, and so that the physical part wasn't tough. And so then, having taken the bar exam in July of 2009, after graduating from law school, I found out that I failed in November. And so that set me back, because my identity was obliterated. I was just a worker now. I had the experience of graduating from law school, which I was so relieved to have done, because I worried about money the whole time I was in there. I never tossed and turned worrying about grades, even though I probably should have, and it's reflected in that. But I tossed and turned about money. One catastrophe, and I was toast, because I didn't have any reserve of money. I just had enough to continue to support myself through law school. So that's what I had worked for, and then I failed the California bar exam and found out in November, so I wasn't going to take it again until February. Well, I failed that one too. And then I finally passed when I took the July 2010 administration. It was a combination of things. I probably didn't study the right way all the time. I couldn't dedicate hours at a time because I had to work. And I didn't have a very strong academic background, because my grades were not that high in law school, because grades were in some ways the last thing on my mind. So I just failed twice, and it was really hard. And I felt that I didn't know who I was, because I wasn't a lawyer, and I wasn't a successful bar taker, and I wasn't a Californian, and I was trying to move out of Tennessee, And so I wasn't really a Tennessean, and it was really tough. And then I didn't have anybody at work that I could relate to. And it was really a lonely time. And I struggled with just a lot. I never felt depressed, but I didn't feel happy. And I just kept thinking, how much longer am I going to have to do this? I went to school to be a lawyer, and that is what I had worked towards. And then that seemed to be going nowhere. That seemed to have been for nothing. And a year to a lot of people might seem like it flows by like that, but it doesn't. Not when things aren't working out. And I actually waited tables for 2 years after law school because I took the California bar exam in July of 2010. Didn't find out I passed until November of 2010. Well, by then I had no money. I was completely tapped out. And I turned around and paid the much lower fee to take the Tennessee bar. And I stayed there, and I took a 4th bar exam in a row. Bar exam, as I may have said earlier, is only twice a year. But one thing that actually ironically helped me out is I had this identity crisis, and I didn't know where I fit in, and I didn't really have time for friends, but I would have preferred to have had more people that were in my position at where I worked, and there weren't any. So I didn't have anybody to talk to or that understood. And then I read this book, Longer Hours, Fewer Jobs, Employment and Unemployment in the United States, and it really discussed blue collar and professional jobs in a way that, in a strange way, gave me an identity, because it's hard to explain, but I didn't know who I was. And I realized that as a waitress, no matter where I went to graduate school or law school, I was a blue collar worker. And I think that some of my frustration came about is because I was trained to be a professional, and I wasn't a professional. I was a blue collar. If you want to call waiting tables blue collar, I think that'd be the closest approximation. It's not professional. It's not a professional skill job. Then it would be blue collar. And so I felt like I had an identity, and it was the oddest thing. I didn't expect that to be something that would give my life structure, to understand where I fit in. And I fit in a blue collar, unskilled job. And it wouldn't be until I got past the bar exam and found a job that I would move into the ranks of a professional job. And I just was in this no man's land of trying to get somewhere, and I wasn't there yet, and I wasn't having success with it. And also being present in that moment in an unskilled position. And so if you're in that position and you're going crazy and you feel frustrated and lonely, you're not alone. And I don't know if the best thing to tell somebody is to say, hang on to your identity, you'll get there. And then have that person always be, in some ways, with an eye towards their future, or to implore them to embrace where they are right now, which is perhaps a blue collar situation or a lower skilled job, and to make the best of it. Both of those seem to have real problems, because you don't want to be satisfied with something when you want more, but at the same time, if all you're doing is obsessing about where you're not and how you need to get there, that can make you insane too. And so I think that in this time, when there's people struggle to find jobs, and they struggle with obliteration of their specialty or obliteration of their position, you have an identity crisis. Who am I? Where do I fit? Well, you're not alone. I was there. I know what it's like. And it is a very real thing that you have to experience, and you're not alone. And try not to take it as much to heart as maybe I did, because I didn't know what I was experiencing. I just knew that I felt frustrated. I felt very, very frustrated. So perhaps if somebody had explained to me what I was going through, the ageism, the feeling left out, the feeling that I was the oldest person there, even though I wasn't. There were a few people who were older than myself. It was very, very jarring and very upsetting, but you're not alone. Try to keep your head held up and be proud of yourself, and continue to work towards where you're trying to be, and try not to also feel that your present situation is so miserable, because it is better to have some sort of form of employment than none at all.